This was one of the most surprising mods that I took. Wow! This module was the most interesting, most mind-blowing and intellectually stimulating mod ever. Hi everyone, it's Kai Xin and here's my module review for my Year 4 Sem 1. Happy New Year to all of you, and I know it's gonna be the start of a new Sem soon, so if anyone is looking for module reviews for Modreg, feel free to keep watching to find out. For this semester, I took 5 modules, which was equivalent to 20 MCs. As always, the timestamps are in the descriptions and comments below, so if you're looking for any specific modules, feel free to skip ahead. And the 5 modules that I took and will be covering in this video are BSP3701 Strategic Management, MKT3717 Product and Brand Management, MKT3718 Advertising and Promotion Management, NM3205 Digital Media Cultures, and last but not least, a very special module, NM3551 or Undergraduate Research Project. So without further ado, let's begin. The first mod that I took this semester was BSP3701, which is one of the core mods that all business students have to take. And wow, this was one of the most surprising mods that I took, because BSP3701 turned out to be my easiest and most chill mod this semester. Maybe I was just lucky or something, but the prof who taught my BSP class was Professor Simone Santamaria. He was really nice, and I just think that his classes on the whole was quite enjoyable and quite stress-free. If you break down the grading, 30% goes to class part, 40% goes to a group project, and the final 30% goes to the final test. The final project is the heaviest weightage for this mod, but frankly, it wasn't as bad as I expected. Frankly, it's a little bit similar to the entrepreneurship mods that I took before, where you have to come up with an idea for either a new business of your own or an existing business. So for my group, one of my group mates suggested that we work on Crocs as a company, and another group mate suggested that we could launch workshops for Crocs. For the project, we had to do the usual business presentation with the SWOT analysis, Porter's 5 forces, business model canvas, etc. But the fun and interesting part is where you get to create an MVP of your idea and test it. This probably isn't new for anyone who has done or studied entrepreneurship before, but a great way to test your idea is by using an MVP or minimum viable product. For this mod, we had to create a video to showcase the idea, as well as 2 versions of a website in order to do a small-scale A/B test to see which version performed better. So my rating for this mod would be 4.5 out of 5 for ease, 3 out of 5 for learning, 3 out of 5 for fun, which gives an overall score of 3.5 out of 5 for BSP3701 Strategic Management. Moving on, the second mod that I took this sem was MKT3717 Product and Brand Management. The mod is taught by Professor 𝘾𝙊𝙁𝙁, who is really quite experienced because she's been teaching marketing for quite some time. She's very knowledgeable, and what I appreciated the most was how she would really take the time to write down detailed feedback on every assignment or project we did. In terms of the assessments for MKT3717, you have various individual or group projects that account for 15%, a group project that accounts for 30%, a midterm that takes up 20%, a final test that is also 20%, and class participation, which accounts for 15%. This is probably one of the most challenging mods that I've taken, in the sense that the workload is quite heavy. You have readings every week from the textbook, and you do have to read them because a large part of the chapters will be tested for midterms and final tests. And what makes this mod also quite tough is that you have not just 1, but 2 group projects. The first group project is a case presentation, where every week 2 groups will be assigned a case and they'll have to do a presentation in the form of a pre-recorded video and then answer a Q&A during class. My group was assigned a case on 𝘾𝙀, not the K-pop group, but a brand that makes protein bars using crickets. Here are some snapshots of my part during the case presentation, where I redesigned the packaging, website, and so on. The second major group project that's worth 30% is where you have to create a new product and brand. My group came up with a brand called 𝘾𝙊𝙉, which is basically a personal safety device targeted at women that can be worn as a bracelet on your wrist that's equipped with GPS, an emergency alarm, and a laser. My rating for this module would be 2.5 out of 5 for ease because, like I said, it's quite a challenging mod, but 4 out of 5 for learning because in spite of all the difficulties, you still learn quite a lot of valuable things like conjoint analysis and market testing, and 3 out of 5 for fun, which gives an overall score of 3.2 out of 5 for MKT3717 Product and Brand Management. The third module that I took was MKT3718 Advertising and Promotion Management. The module is taught by Ms. 𝘾𝙊𝙉𝙍𝙊, who isn't a professor but has years of experience working in the industry. So even though her approach may be a little different, I think one thing I really appreciate is how there are real-life examples brought in every lesson. And Ms. 𝘾𝙊𝙉𝙍𝙊 is really nice in encouraging class participation. So she tries her best to give fair and equal chances to everyone to participate and contribute. Speaking of class participation, this of course, like every other business mod, is included in the assessment. For this mod, class participation and discussion is 15%, and there's also one individual assignment where you design a poster that's worth 20%, a team assignment where you analyze some ads and apply it to a business based in Singapore that's worth 25%, a group project and presentation where you create an integrated marketing communications or IMC campaign for an electrical appliance brand in Singapore, which is also worth 25%. And last but not least, you're also graded individually for your presentation for the group project, which is worth 15%. Because I actually prefer individual assignments over group projects, my favorite assignment from this module had to be the individual one, where we had to design a poster for a non-profit organization in Singapore. The main concept I wanted to have was to have a dog inside a rubbish bin, as if he was being thrown away like an unwanted object, in order to evoke a sense of sympathy and pity. And it was really quite fun, because it was a little like NM3217, which I took last semester. So my overall rating for this module would be 3.5 out of 5 for ease, 3 out of 5 for learning, 2.5 out of 5 for fun, which gives an average score of 3 out of 5 for MKT3718 Advertising and Promotion Management. Now, moving on from the business mods to my CNM mods. The fourth mod that I took this semester was NM3205 Digital Media Cultures. And wow, this module was the most interesting, most mind-blowing and intellectually stimulating mod ever. Every week, we cover a topic on how digital media technology has transformed culture and society. And the mod was taught by Professor 𝘾𝙍𝙀𝙉, who is just incredibly knowledgeable and such a fantastic teacher. Class participation is graded and worth 20%, but Prof. 𝘾𝙍𝙀 never makes it feel pressurizing. There were also 3, which was later reduced to 2, class presentations every 2 to 3 weeks. And while the content isn't graded, it's just meant for a chance for students to participate. You also have to write fortnightly 500-word write-ups based on reading on Luminous, which are worth 30% in total, as well as a midterm essay that's worth 20% and a final essay that's worth 30%. My favorite piece of writing that I did was the final essay, which I wrote on the digitization and datification of intimacy based on the case study of digital dating platforms and matchmaking apps like Tinder, OkCupid, and most notably, the 𝘾𝙊𝙇 project, which, in case you haven't heard of, is a matchmaking platform created by our very own NUS seniors. And it makes use of supposedly a psychology and economics Nobel Prize algorithm to find students the ideal date. I love writing and there's just so much I want to talk about, but if I were to go into detail, this video would probably be like an hour long. So maybe one day I'll create a separate video on how to write essays. But back to the module review. So I'm probably biased in my ratings, but here are my ratings for this module, which I gave 3.5 out of 5 for ease, because it's not the easiest module, but 5 out of 5 for learning, because I learned so much, and of course 5 out of 5 for fun, because the module was just so enjoyable. And that gives NM3205 Digital Media Cultures an overall score of 4.5 out of 5, which is a new high score because it's the highest I've ever given for any module. Which also brings us to the fifth and final module for the semester, which I also gave a 4.5 out of 5. So the fifth module that I took this semester was NM3551 Undergraduate Research Opportunity, or UROP for short. And it's a special module that's worth 4 MCs like any other module, but allows you to do a research project with a prof. So I was looking through this list and I saw this project by Professor 𝘼𝙍𝙊𝙉𝙏, also known as Dr. Sean, titled The Roles of Social Media Engagement in Campaigns for Social Change in Southeast Asia, which was on different social media campaigns for social change, such as environmental, social, and cultural campaigns. Being a marketing and CNM student, and because I've always had an interest particularly in how organizations can use marketing or business for social change or social good, I was really intrigued by this project and so I applied for it. For the UROP project, there isn't really a fixed assessments rubrics or breakdown like other mods. Usually, the prof might ask you to keep a journal to record your learnings throughout the semester and then write a final paper. But for my project, Dr. Sean decided to replace the journal with a literature review instead, by asking me to read journal articles and then do a write-up, which could be integrated into the final paper. Lol, and fun fact, I read and downloaded so many papers that Google Scholar thought I was a bot. And then I got banned. I also had to scour the internet to look for social marketing campaigns in Southeast Asia, such as the Hope Through the Night campaign by the Samaritans of Singapore, Hair for Hope by the Children's Cancer Foundation, and the Run with Sai for Charity campaign in Cambodia. In total, there were about 292 social media posts, which I then conducted a qualitative content analysis on, as you can see from this massive Excel sheet, where we analysed each line one by one. And after doing all that, we compiled the results and discussed our findings and interpretations, and then put them all together into a final paper. The entire process is actually much more complicated than this, but for the sake of this video, I condensed it down quite a lot. So if you're interested to find out more, I would love to make an entire video all about my UROP experience. Lastly, I think one of the best parts of the UROP was being able to work with Dr. Sean, who is really one of the nicest profs I've ever met at NUS. And he even suggested that we could write the paper with the goal of submitting and publishing it in a journal when he heard that I was interested in going into academia and doing postgrad studies. So all in all, my ratings for NM3551, the undergraduate research opportunity, or UROP, would be 3.5 out of 5 for ease, 5 out of 5 for learning, and 5 out of 5 for fun, which gives an average score of 4.5 out of 5. In summary, these are the ratings for the 5 modules that I took this semester. BSP3701, Strategic Management, 3.5 out of 5. It's a core module that all business students have to take, and it's really like an entrepreneurship module. Honestly, not that bad depending on the prof that you get. MKT3717, Product and Brand Management, 3.2 out of 5. It's a very challenging mod with a heavy workload, but you really learn a lot of valuable marketing skills from Prof Tan, who is a strict but great professor. MKT3718, Advertising and Promotion Management, 3 out of 5. It's not the best marketing module that I've taken, but Ms. Ken-Lee is probably one of the nicest instructors. NM3205, Digital Media Cultures, 4.5 out of 5. A fantastic module taught by the fantastic Professor 𝘼𝙁𝙁𝙁, and taking this module was just like having my mind blown, but in the best sort of way. And last but not least, NM3551, Undergraduate Research Project, 4.5 out of 5. It really depends on the project and the professor, but for me, a wonderful experience learning under Dr. Sean. I highly recommend this, and in fact, I would say it's a must-take if you're interested in academic writing and taking postgrad studies. And that's all for my module review for Year 4 Sem 1 in 2021. Make sure to comment down below if you have any suggestions for what videos you would like to watch. And if you enjoyed this video, do like and subscribe to see more videos on study tips and other useful content.